Welcome to On the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. Tonight is our 100th episode, and we will have plenty of reaction to that later on. But first, we want to introduce a very special guest. He's the Executive Vice President and General Manager of the Baltimore Orioles and has held that position since the fall of 2018. He is Mike Elias. Mike, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
You bet, guys. Honored to be here on the 100th episode. It's great.
We'll jump right into kind of state of the Orioles and your approach to handling things. And one thing that the three of us, feel like you've done very well is with the trades you have made. Is your approach to moving players that you would rather hold on to them than settle for an uninspiring return, even if that return would be a little more timely?
Well, it's a great question. Unfortunately, it's not something I can answer easily from like a philosophical level because it's just so case by case that it's really hard for me to paint a broad brush about that. I think generally speaking, we try to have an idea of a player's value in mind as best we can, and then how they fit into the team's plans over the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, where they fit in, and whether we might be better off, in our current rebuilding, reloading phase of taking that value and putting it more into the future in the form of younger players that haven't accrued as much service time in the major leagues. And to take all that and square it, and then also put in the intangible factors about what it does to the rest of your roster and people that follow the team and all kinds of factors that it's hard to even rattle off. That's I guess ultimately the job of being a baseball executive is trying to weigh all those things and then deciding when and how to pull the trigger. But making trades is really, really hard. You rarely line up with other teams. The timing has to be right. There are medical reviews. There's all types of people involved. It's something that falls through 99.5% of the time when you're having trade talks, and it's kind of a success in and of itself when two teams are able to line up well on a trade that makes sense for both teams, and it kind of goes smoothly.
One thing we've seen in particular has been the acquisition of young international players, looking at Michel Deschamps, Gene Pinto, Isaac De Leon, among others, that have come back in trades in recent years. How important has that been to try to build up the talent pipeline in this farm system?
I think part of it is it's just kind of happened to happen for us, but also I think we did make a point, especially in 2019 and 2020, before our own international signing program was really off the ground, of like, oh crap, we don't have very many interesting players in this age group, and we've got these DSL and then the GCL games to play, and you want to have interesting guys getting those repetitions. So it was really a area of our farm system that we thought could use some reinforcement. The Orioles weren't really signing that many players of that age group or of any significance in like 2016, 2017. And, getting a couple guys that could fit right in there and backfill that, we thought would be a nice way of getting our international pipeline flowing a little bit. And also we feel, I think we have a few executives that have some comfort with international players, either with history with the individual players or just kind of some feel for looking at DSL stats. And it's an age group that has so much variation. I mean, the odds of there's so much that's going to happen to those guys, both good and bad, when they're 17 years old, that if you're a playoff team, you're not too worried about it. And so it's something that can be available to you in trades a little bit more easily. But I think it's been nice getting some interesting young guys in that age group. They're doing well for their age. They're interesting. That's really all you can say about them at this point. There's a long ways to go, but they've been a nice shot in the arm for the complex levels of our system. And now they're in Delmarva or in Pinto's case, higher.
Absolutely. All right, Mike, it's fitting we have you here since I think your last tweet is still shouting us out on Twitter from last August. So
really?
Perfect for episode 100 here. There's no question that this organization needed a complete rebuild from top to bottom, and the farm system's easily in its healthiest condition it's ever been at least since I've been watching. As a result, there's a portion of fans that feel the short-term interest of the Major League team could have been better taken care of to provide some competitive games over the past few years, maybe sign a couple guys at the Major League level. How difficult has it been to balance those priorities?
Well, it's balance is a good word, and it's certainly difficult, being that our major priority, specifically in 2019, 2020, 2021, was elevating the overall level of talent in the organization, kind of irregardless of whether that talent was in AAA or in the Dominican, like I was just describing. We just needed to get the whole boat up, and raise the talent base, and part of that is bringing in players at the major league level that are on waivers, the Jorge Mateos of the world, and allowing them to play for the first time in their career and hopefully getting some breakouts out of those groups. And in order to be able to do that, you've got to have the 40-man roster spots, you got to have the 26-man roster spots, you got to have the playing time. And part of that is leaving some opportunity for some young, unproven players at the major league level, a Cole Sulser, players like that. And, that's something that doesn't always go smoothly. Obviously, those players are freely available for a reason. They have very little experience at the major leagues. They're going to take their lumps. It can be difficult. But also we had, this is not a franchise or market with infinite resources. Nobody is. And we had a very significant amount of investment that needed to take place across the organization, particularly in physical, but also like digital and people infrastructure. And then we had these massive draft bonus pools, which this year is like almost $20 million. And so there's a lot to be funded up and down the organization. And for us, we were keeping the priorities where they needed to be, which is laying the foundation of a healthy organization for the next 20 years, but also as much future value and future potential as we could get into our farm system. And so we're going to continue to balance, I think, forever in that we're never going to want to mortgage the future. We're never going to want to go all in totally on the present or totally on the future ever again. We want to have a nice, healthy, balanced organization that hopefully makes smart moves. And I think, it's shown to be possible in places like Milwaukee and Cleveland and Tampa and Houston. And it's something that, we're going to aspire to do now that we feel like we've got that healthy underbelly of an organization very much in place, and it's most visible in the minor leagues.
And that makes a lot of sense. And there's also that new Dominican Academy being built, which I'm sure was a pretty huge expense itself. How's that coming along?
Yeah, it's coming along very well. I'm very excited about it. They've got the land and the baseball fields all graded and cleared, and we've got foundation going up and walls. So we're getting some brick and mortar down in the buildings. I think it's something that's very likely to open in 2023. It's going to be like a top 5 academy on the island, which is really cool. I also, for people that are wonks of Dominican scouting and player development, it's a great location. It's really close to the Guardians, the Brewers, the Astros, the Royals, a bunch of other teams. Really nice neighborhood there, close to the airport. It's going to be a great spot for us to work out of. So I think it's going to be the cherry on top of what we've been trying to do with our Latin American operations the last couple of years.
Speaking of the payroll and this healthy farm system now, how do you know when is the time to flip that switch to be competitive again in terms of major spending at the major league level? How will we know as fans paying attention when it's time?
Well, I think this year is going to be a big step towards that. I mean, not just in terms of positive developments, which we're hoping to have. And I think other than seeing hopefully continued success from guys like Cedric Mullins and Ryan Mountcastle and the young players that we have on the roster, Austin Hayes and these guys in Santander, we are hoping to graduate maybe 5 guys from our top 10 prospects list, which is a really good top 10 list, into the big leagues and seeing what they do. So I think there's a lot of information coming our way this year. Some of that's negative information, like John Means needing Tommy John surgery. That's not something that we hope for or plan for, obviously, but that's what I mean. You kind of got to see how the die or the dice rolls a little bit this year. And, once we have the internal evaluation that our playoff odds are escalating and getting to the point of being worthwhile, then, we're going to place our chips on that because we want to get this team to the playoffs as soon as possible.
Kind of leads into the next question that I had. And I think this is a point you've made before, and it's something that has played out around baseball where it doesn't always go in linear fashion that a team starts, at one place and gets better within 4 years or 5 years and just gradually goes up. There probably are going to be bumps in the roads and setbacks, and maybe 1 year will be a little bit worse than the year before. So while keeping that in mind, how do you assess progress year over year?
I think it boils down to the individual players, and not that Cedric's got to go 30-30 again to have a good development, but we want to see him, maintain the stock that he has of being an impact major league player this year. We want to see Adley Rutschman get healthy, get rolling, hopefully have a good debut some point this season. We want to see Grayson and Kyle Bradish and these arms blossom. And, if I very much hope that we have a better win-loss record than we did last year, especially with the season that we had last year. That would be great. But I think those individual developments, the overall health of our talent base will continue to be more important than nitpicking, a 1 or 2 loss dip. But to me, I want to see our record improve as much as possible, as quickly as possible. But I want to see it done with players that are going to be around here for a while and that have a meaningful part of our future. So I think, getting success from the guys that are going to be here a while, playing better baseball, winning some more games, all of those things are going to contribute to us being able to call 2022 a success.
Yeah, and those internal improvements can change a major league team's fortunes in a hurry, as we've seen in recent years from White Sox, Blue Jays, Padres, Giants, those types of teams. Do you see a similar thing happening for the Orioles over the next couple of years?
Yeah, we do. I think the teams that you named, I think the thing that jumps out is a core of position player talent. They have lineups that are mostly homegrown, a lot of big bonus babies, high picks, whatever, just big toolsy talent up and down the lineup. And they layer in pitching around those players. And that's been a blueprint for rebuilding here, I think, the last 20 years or so in the majors. It's been no secret that we've been using a lot of our high picks on position players, but I think that's why we look up and we've got, Adley and Kauser and Gunnar and Westberg and these guys towards the top of our prospect list. And then hopefully Mullins and Mountcastle and these guys keep trucking along at the major leagues. All of a sudden you can start to really dream on a pretty good lineup in your mind. And, I'm very fortunate that I think that the organization made 2 outstanding first-round pitcher picks the 2 years prior to me being here. And so we're trying to keep those guys healthy as well. But I do feel like our position player base, when you combine the major leagues and the minor leagues together, and if in terms of players that are out there that are not on big free agent contracts, that are kind of in their homegrown phase of their career, it stacks up really, really well. And I really hope that we're able to see a end product that's similar to Toronto and the White Sox and the other examples.
So this deep talented farm system, like the Orioles currently have built up here, like I said, can be useful in many ways. But not only having players come up and succeed in the major league level, we've already seen guys like Ryan Mountcastle start to establish themselves. But you can also trade from this depth. And do you envision both of these scenarios playing out as this team does get closer to contention?
Yeah, I do. We just try to when we're drafting, it's really hard to make a good draft pick. I mean, usually you look at it and you end up with a guy that's not a big leaguer, or even worse, like not even interesting minor leaguer. It happens most of the time, even with a high pick. And so we just try to use the draft, the early picks of the draft, to make as good of value picks as we possibly can. Get the best players that we can get our hands on. If we end up with 4 shortstops, great. I don't think, we want to end up with 4 first basemen or 4 left fielders, because it's a little harder to push those guys around the diamond and get them playing time, both in the majors and the minors. But depth is a good thing for the reasons that you described. Number one, you just need the depth anyway yourself, and the competition, which I think is an underrated aspect of this, when players feel that there's a guy behind them and a guy ahead of them and a guy to the side of them. It has a cultural effect that I think we're seeing in our minor leagues in a positive way. But we're at some point, we can't keep all these guys. The rules are set up with the Rule 5 draft and the 40-man roster to prevent you from hoarding too many quantity of prospects. And I really look forward to the days when we're picking 3 or 4 guys out of our system and painfully shipping them off for somebody's starting pitcher or whatever it may be. And that's absolutely something that's coming, and it will be a very fun period of time, I think.
One trend that we saw last year was that there were several prospects who got cups of coffee or kind of few week-long runs at a higher level to end the year. Gunnar Henderson and Drew Ramabui, Misael Deson, Delmarva, those are a few examples. All 3 of those players have been successful to start off this year repeating those levels. So with that in mind, is getting players exposed at a higher level a deliberate part of the player development strategy, or is it kind of a reaction to 2020 and the lost time that took place because of the pandemic?
Yeah, I think we love doing what we were able to do last year with getting a gunner up to a level to AA for like 2 weeks and a playoff series and all that. I just think, other than the real benefit of that experience and the reward for having a good season in high A, I think psychologically, when you go back there the next year, just to feel like you've already know what it looks like and you kind of have a little bit of a sophomore kind of swagger to you, I just think it's very helpful, and it's something we'll definitely look to do, as guys wrap up this year. But I think that overall our promotion strategy is kind of conservative on the front end, but when somebody is proving that they're doing well at a level, we want to get them out of there. So I think, we're slow to take risks, but we're quick to make sure that we're not overcooking somebody at a level, and we want to keep them challenged.
How exciting is it for the team to have not only the first overall draft pick and the first pick of each round in the draft coming up, but 5 of the first 81 picks? And with the hope that this is one of the last times the team has to pick super early in the draft if we're in contention soon. Is this draft any different than the first 3 during your tenure as far as strategy?
Well, I think it's really good draft. We just had this morning, we had what we call our midway meetings with the scouting department, and all the scouts clocked in on Zoom, and we just talked through some of the top players in the country and what we wanted to do in terms of scouting process the rest of the way. We are picking first. Obviously, that's at the top of the plate. I probably say this a lot, but I think we have a really hard decision to make because there's good options, but it's a really good year at the top. I mean, obviously, it's position players this year. Really no way around that. College and high school, a lot of really good high school players. And there's some really exciting kids. And we got 3 months and we got a combine and all kinds of stuff coming up. So it's hard for me to forecast the future at this point. But I know I don't feel like we're getting cheaped out in terms of having the number 1 pick, because that can happen. I mean, I've been a part of it, and I've seen other teams. It's just you can have a really bad year to have the number 1 pick. And it doesn't feel that way. I think we're going to be in good shape. And we've got a comp A pick. We have the first pick in the second round. We got 2 comp B picks because of the trade that we did in spring training with the Marlins. And then we have the first pick in the 3rd round. So this is going to be like one of the biggest drafts in Orioles history. And I think to have that on top of the number 1 farm system right now, it's a pretty big deal in terms of the talent that's going to be on the way here to Baltimore in the next 5 to 10 years.
That is one thing that's interesting about the draft, is how it has shifted in the last few years. Pre-2021, we would be 2 months out from the draft right now. You wouldn't have a combine. You've been involved in a lot of drafts over the years. Do you like the system now of having the draft a little deeper into the summer and having that combine in the middle, or do you not have a clear preference at this point?
Yeah, so the primary, there's two reasons that they moved it into late July. Number one is the give us a little more space for a combine off the heels of the College World Series, and the number two is I think they want the draft on the All-Star weekend or All-Star break for publicity purposes. And I think both of those are great, especially with the College World Series. A couple of times in my career, we've taken a really high pick, Alex Bregman or whatever, who was playing the College World Series, and you've got to wait and hope he doesn't get hurt and wait to do his physical. And especially if you've saved money on that pick and then you're applying it to different picks, it's very suspenseful and it kind of jams up your whole signing class. So it's nice to have that gone. But moving the draft from June to late July has really kind of screwed up the scouting calendar. The scouts are usually done with the draft by June 10th or 12th. They're able to turn their attention entirely to the very next draft class and pro scouting. And now they've got to do both of those things prior to the current year draft. And then we have a draft on July 19th and then a trade deadline on July 31st. It's just absolutely crazy stretch of 20 days of huge decisions and all your scouting and front office resources and nobody getting any sleep and all that. So that part we don't like. I probably prefer the June setup, but I don't know that it's coming back.
Beyond the draft, international signings, and these trades that have been made over the last couple of years, perhaps the most underrated aspect of this rebuild is the complete overhaul in player development. And you can see the improvements in things like plate discipline, swing decisions at every level so far in the majors. Last year, in particular, the pitching strikeouts. How important is it for all these things to trickle up along with these prospects as they start to make their debuts?
Well, it's gotten so competitive in player development in a good way. I think in the last 7 years, there was a tremendous change in baseball player development, not just in pro ball, but also in college ball, and then like private amateur instruction, all of which was spurred by technological introductions, most significantly TrackMan or other radar tracking physics measurements of the baseball systems that came out. But also bat sensors, really, really sophisticated cameras, body sensors, all types of stuff. It totally changed what it meant to coach baseball players on a lot of levels. Took the industry a while to kind of grapple with it at the major league level. I feel like the Houston Astros, the Los Angeles Dodgers were kind of the first teams to get very aggressive in turning the page to this era. I think the Orioles were among some of the later teams to do it. Obviously, we have changed that. I think that we've caught up and we're right there in the mix with everyone else. But speaking very honestly, I can't say that, it's not 30 teams pretty much on equal footing again right now. I mean, everybody's doing it this way. So, but if you aren't doing it this way, you'd be really in bad shape. And, it's nice that we don't have that concern and we're staying very competitive in terms of hiring, retaining, promoting the right types of people. And I think it's showing up in our players improving and getting the most out of themselves and spreading a good word around the baseball community about what it means to be developed in the Orioles system, which is great.
You talk about the hiring aspect of this and the coaches, and there are a lot of rising stars on the coaching side of this as well that I think kind of get overlooked. Ryan Fuller now in the big leagues, we really enjoyed talking to him when we had that opportunity. Justin Ramsey, Buck Britton, and many others. Are we seeing this new version of the Oriole way here in Birdland?
Well, I hope so. I think the biggest thing for me is it's not like there's one perfect way to do everything. But there's so much value to be drawn from having alignment up and down your organization that, whether you're type A or type B when it comes to hitting as an organization, that's fine. There's good and bad, but having discontinuity across the levels, having mixed messages to the players. They lose faith in the organization. They lose respect for who's talking to them, and the whole thing falls apart. And I can promise that we have a very unified, organized player development chain from all the way to the top to Brandon Hyde, all the way down to the Dominican, where there's good communication. We course correct when needed. We use information and data to guide us and make sure that we're doing the best that we can on a year-to-year basis. And I think that's a big achievement. It's hard to do that and get yourself on the same page, but I feel great about the people that we have on the coaching side throughout the organization.
Well, Mike, we really appreciate you joining us for this episode, and best of luck the rest of the way going forward, top to bottom in the organization.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great being on. I hope to do it again.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
Thanks. See you guys.
See ya.
We go.
See ya.
Holy shit.
That was good.